Welcome to Bump Set Chat, the podcast where volleyball professionals come on and share their stories, experiences, and advice. Today from Vanderbilt, I have ahn-ders Nelson. Welcome.
Thanks, Barry. Really excited to be here, and thanks for all you do for the sport and all you do with the podcast.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on. And the way we start is we do 3 random questions. So are you ready?
Yes. Fire
All
away.
right. So you can hang out with Jerry Stackhouse or Joe Burrows. Who are you picking out?
You've done your homework.
A little bit.
Oh, man, that's tough. I got to pick Stack, man. I got to work with him for about a year, and just somebody who welcomed me a ton to Vanderbilt and made me feel, at home. And also, I still can't get over his career and in college and pro, and just the fact that he still wanted to go back to coaching, and now he's coaching in the NBA. Obviously, he feels like he owes basketball something. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Stack.
All right, there we go. All right, second question. So, favorite meal you enjoyed in Kentucky?
That is tough. I'll say my favorite restaurant at the end was OBC, Old Bourbon County. And that was kind of a place that took care of the volleyball program and also just had incredible Southern food. So as somebody from, the sticks of Wisconsin, it was pretty fun to try some Southern food for about a decade.
Nice. And now that you've been to Nashville, what's your, have you found a spot yet?
Yes, actually, we're going to our favorite spot tonight. So good timed question. Yeah, there's a cool place called Answer right in our neighborhood. It's just like a neighborhood place that does, I can't even explain it. It's simple but amazing. So
nice.
Really good Southern food again and lots of variety. So you can't go wrong with food in this city, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, the last question, what was the best thing about where you live?
Ooh, the best thing about living in Nashville, I would say, is the growth it's seen over the last few years. I would say is just made it a really easy place for someone like us to move to, and they welcome transplants like crazy. And there's a joke in this city that if you're born and raised in Nashville, you're called a unicorn. So it's just very rare to have that situation. So it's really easy to move here and feel included right away and feel like you're a part of it.
Excellent. All right. Well, hey, welcome to the pod. And I saw some tweets. You were over in Paris. How was that experience?
Yes. Yeah, I got to so first of all, Avery Skinner, a player that I coached at University of Kentucky, had just a breakout couple of summers and, got herself in position to make the Olympic team. And she reached out to me in the early spring, way earlier than I was kind of, expecting something like this, and said, hey, if I make it, is there any chance you would want to go? Because they're asking for ticket requests already. And I just texted somebody yesterday, but if a former athlete asks you that, you find a way to go.
Yeah.
So got to cross a huge item off my bucket list of watching, a former player in the Olympics. But also, I'd never been to Europe, which is crazy for somebody with my volleyball background at this point. But done a couple of foreign trips, but not to Europe. So I got to cross that off the bucket list too. And I know it's been spreading around social media, but man, did Paris do an incredible job of hosting. It was so easy to be there as a tourist.
Yeah.
And people were friendly, and tickets. We went to 6 volleyball matches in 5 days. So really got to see both men and women at the highest level, and what a cool experience.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. And now, did you go there with Vanderbilt people, or did you and your husband take a trip?
I wish my husband could have made the trip. He had a family event come up last minute, so he couldn't make it, but I actually got to go with some coaching friends, and 2 of them from the University of Kentucky, so that was a really fun kind of reunion tour for us. And then another coaching friend, Bird LaFleur-Kuhn, who just won the PBF championship with Omaha Supernovas. Her and I are just people that have gotten really close through coaching, and she's kind of my friend where if you ask her, she might say yes, and she said yes to this one. So it was a great time.
What were some of the highlights from the volleyball? Which matches did you get to see?
Yeah, one of the things I really wanted to do, and I've been to a couple of VNL matches, but never the Olympics where, the stakes are even higher. And so I really wanted to pay attention to the routines ahead of time and things like that. So I took a lot of notes on that, just how they warm up, and you're seeing, these women and men who've been playing volleyball for decades on decades and just respect the warm up the way they do. And they have to at that age. And I understand that, but just getting to see that firsthand was pretty cool. And just how much they put into everything they do, not just the points that we see, during the match. But other than that, I think the thing that'll stand out the most is the match atmosphere. It is just, I want every American volleyball fan to see an international match at this point, because the pride, the uniform cheers, the knowledge of the crowd, it's just unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I'm as big of a volleyball nerd as they come, so getting to see that was something I won't forget.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to go up to Ottawa to catch the VNLs. And like you said, that just, even though it's not Europe, the Canadian crowd shows up and the volleyball knowledge is strong and it's just a great environment. And the thing that really surprised me was like, before the match starts at the referee stand is like both teams are up there with their, rubber bands. It's like a social gathering. It was so funny to see.
Yeah, they've all played with each other, against each other for decades. Yeah, and you even see that in the sportsmanship throughout rallies. There's
Yeah.
different ways you can see if a player barely goes under the net. There's an apology almost immediately.
Yeah.
So there's a real respect for the game and respect for their careers that you can tell during the play.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's get into volleyball here. So first of all, where are you from?
I'm originally from a small town in Wisconsin called St. Croix Falls. It's about an hour northeast out of Minneapolis. So kind of close-ish to the suburbs of Minneapolis, but just outside. And yeah, got into volleyball totally through my sister. I'm one of those younger brothers that was basketball, 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 and I'm 6'9", so I kind of had the natural push into that sport. But my sister started playing and got into higher level when she got into high school, and we're in a rural area, so we had to kind of find our volleyball opportunities. And my sister ended up traveling a long ways to play for one of the best clubs in Minneapolis, but turned into an incredible college career for her. Went to 2 Final Fours as an All-American. Just had like kind of a storybook career. And if I wasn't already obsessed with volleyball, watching her go through her career just made me more obsessed. And I told my parents when she went through the recruiting process, and again, very fortunate, she was recruited by everybody. So I got to see, people like John Dunning sat in our living room, which is a really cool experience for me, as a middle schooler. But I told my parents then that I wanted to be a college volleyball coach. I just was enamored by the recruiting process. I knew I was obsessed with the sport, even as like an 8th grader.
Yeah.
So yeah, my volleyball journey kind of began then, and I just kind of started making every step I could towards collegiate coaching.
Oh, wow. And now, where does, growing up in Minnesota, where does boys volleyball rank?
Yeah, so it's grown a ton. I think they just named boys volleyball as a sanctioned sport in the state of Minnesota just a couple of years ago, and just news that is just music to my ears. So excited about that. I did not play volleyball with any guys growing up, so I ran cross country, and I would sprint. I didn't really work very hard in cross country, I'll be honest, unless I knew the volleyball team was practicing afterwards. I finished a little faster those days, so I could go be their practice player. But besides that, and peppering with my sister, at the lake house and, in the driveway and things like that, I didn't have any organized knowledge until I got to college.
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So I actually went to the University of Minnesota first.
Yeah.
Spent 2 years there, was a manager with the women's team. My sister was on the team for one of those years. And I played club volleyball. And that was my first, they had to teach me rotations when I joined the club team.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So I am kind of shocked because I see you ended up going to Ball State.
Yeah, it was, again, a weird scenario, right place, right time, right people around me. But at the University of Minnesota, one of the assistant coaches was Dave Booz, who's now at the University of Florida. So he's a family friend, and I've had the pleasure of now competing against him for about 15 years. But Dave got the head coaching job at Ball State, and he asked me to come down and work at camp because I had been a manager for the program. And while I was down there for the camp, the men's coaches saw me and offered me a spot on the team. And 2 weeks later, I transferred to Ball State. So
wow.
It was a whirlwind. It took a lot of guts, I guess, looking back on it. It took guts, but I knew it would help me in my coaching career. So it was like a no questions asked, I'm doing this.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, absolutely would take guts because here's a kid that has never played club ball or anything like that. And now you're stepping into D1. That was crazy.
It was fun. It was scary. It was fun. I learned a lot. I grew a lot as a person, and obviously a good experience for me to go through as I, now tell our athletes, you got to push yourself out of your comfort zone. So to have some personal experiences, I think helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking back at your time at Ball State, what are some of the, memories that stick out for you?
I mean, getting to play Division I volleyball was something that I never, ever, ever dreamed of doing. I just never thought it was even going to be an opportunity for me. So the first match we got to play, and we had an injury to another middle. So I ended up starting against Stanford, and it was Kavika and Eric Shoji, that team. I mean, they were really good. And I remember going back to serve, and they had me jump serving then topspin, and I'm not a jump topspinner. And I remember going back, and my hand was just shaking in that first match. So that would be one thing I remember. And then I guess the other big memories are obviously the relationships. And everyone in the coaching world knows that the Ball State network is like eerily close and eerily plan-like, and I'll admit that being in it. But the relationships I have with my Ball State guys is, something that I'll have for life, obviously. But there's a certain bond we have, and yeah, there's just so many memories associated with that.
Excellent. And now, going back, what is the hook volleyball has on you? What about this, really great sport? We're all biased, but that, right now you're still involved with it and coaching, at D1.
Yeah, when I first got to Vandy, I got asked that question a lot, and I don't know that I had a really good answer for it. Since it's a really good question, why do you love what you do every single day? I think my favorite thing about volleyball is the fact that there's six people competing, in a tiny little box on the court. I think
Yeah.
that makes it so unique in itself, and the teamwork, collaboration, the synergy that you just have to have. And sometimes it's inexplainable. There's teams that I've coached where I'm like, man, we were really good at the in between. I can't put my finger on what made us so good. But that's why I love volleyball. Is like there's that cohesion, that chemistry that makes you a way better team if you're good at it. And yeah, it's unlike any other sport in my opinion that way. I also think one of the benefits of volleyball as we move forward in the new age of attention spans is it's a
Yeah.
20-second rally and then a 10-second break. And
Right.
I am somebody who gets bored at sporting events once in a while. So I
Yeah.
don't get bored at volleyball. I watch for 20 seconds and then you either watch the replay or you can shoot a text or talk about it. And I think it really, as a spectator sport, really works well with where our attention spans are going.
I've never even thought of that, but you're so right. Yeah, like whether you're at a football game, it's just there's long moments where you're just
Yeah.
like, all right. But yeah, with volleyball, action, some rallies could go 30, 40 seconds. And then, all right,
Yeah.
let's just get, a little quick word and then right back to it.
Yeah, minus the NFL taking like 4 hours to get a game in. I think that's part of the reason why Americans are so obsessed with the NFL too. It's you have a down and
Yep.
then you get a break. You have a
Yeah.
down and you get a break. So I think again, if given the right opportunities, volleyball is going to continue to grow as a spectator sport.
Yeah, and one of the things I saw coming out of the Olympics was news reports saying why is volleyball such an underrated sport, and it's like I think it's just lack of exposure we have here in the states.
Yeah, I got to be careful. I probably need to shut up on Twitter a little more than I do right now. But I'm just fighting for our athletes, and that's really
Yeah,
where it comes from. I truly believe the top athletes in volleyball are the best female athletes in the world, and they need to be that needs to be shown, that needs to be
yeah,
displayed. And I think about the experiences again that my sister had in college, and how much volleyball's grown since then. They would have a match or two on TV every year, and now it's like every match is going to be on TV in some capacity. So it's there, and I need to be more grateful for all of the growth we have had. At
yeah,
the same time, I believe it is my responsibility and the rest of coaches in our country. It's our responsibility to grow the game and get more exposure.
yeah.
So I'm going to be vocal about it, and I'm going to try to get as many opportunities as I can for the young women that play our sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great last year to see the PVF throw their games on YouTube so people could watch it. I wish, the other thing I wish is that VNL wasn't sort of walled behind this thing so that they can have like ESPN or other sporting networks in the states, show it and let other people expose what such a great game it is to watch.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, when we've gotten the opportunities, it's done really well. And um, this is a great time to talk about all of the television broadcasts for the fall season are coming out, and I'm seeing more matches on ESPN and more matches, a few matches on ABC of regular season. Like this is really, really big stuff.
Yeah.
And I just hope that the media is paying attention because it's going to be a really fun fall of college volleyball.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. So, going back to coaching. So, when was your first coaching gig?
That's a good question too. I think my very first coaching gig was with Muncie Burris. So Muncie Burris, when I first got to Ball State, again, knowing like, okay, you've taken a jump to be a coach, and you've made this jump a lot to be a coach and get in this network. So I got the opportunity to be an assistant for Muncie Burris, and I think when I got there, they had won 12 state titles in a row, and Steve Shondell was the coach. So how lucky am I that my very first boss, as a coach was Steve Shondell, one of the most legendary trainers. And I will die on this hill. Like that man can teach a young kid to pass better than any human being I've ever been around. It's just absolutely incredible. But yeah, I got to work with him and got to win a lot right off the bat. So I won two state titles with Muncie Burris as an assistant, again, along for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
We had some incredible players that went on to play at Wisconsin and Florida and huge places like that. So I got to be exposed right off the bat to some pretty high level volleyball. And after that, I joined Munciana and got to work with them. But my first year, I was with the 14-2s, and that was a totally different experience. I was dealing with athletes at a different level and
Right.
um, dealing with parents differently. So it was
Mm-hmm.
a totally new exposure. And Then I got to be with Monsignor 18-1s with Mike Lingenfelter the following year. And this is what I'm talking about. By choosing to go to Ball State, I got to be surrounded by Mike Lingenfelter, Steve Shondell, and that's just a couple people. Wes Lyon is another person who really changed how I looked at volleyball. And God, I was lucky. I had no idea how lucky I was. I'm glad I showed up and showed up every day. But man, I was lucky to be around those guys.
Yeah. And then you ended up at Kentucky coaching there as well. How did that all come about and what was your experience there?
Yeah, it's the Ball State connection again. So Craig Skinner is a Ball State alum, and Mike Lingenfelter had a connection with him, and Mike really helped me kind of decide where I wanted to volunteer. I knew I wanted to be a volunteer assistant. My body was not holding up to play any longer, so I knew I wanted to be a volunteer at the highest level, and had a few opportunities, but just in my gut felt like I wanted to work for Craig, and what a great decision again. So I'm glad I trusted that, and yeah, I got to spend 12 years with Craig at Kentucky, and just take a program to new heights. And they had done a ton of work before I got there, but to get to be a part of the real rise, to the
Yeah.
really fun stuff, man, was that a privilege and an honor.
Yeah. And now, getting into coaching and getting, climbing that ladder, it's not an easy thing. Often, like you said, you're volunteering as an assistant coach. Then maybe you're in 1 year contracts as, an adult trying to establish themselves, maybe start a family. It is not an easy profession to get into.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there are a lot of young coaches, how I kind of jump to it is I know that you're going to be busy every weekend in the fall. Like, I know that. Do you also know you're going to be busy every weekend in the spring? And you might find out on Monday or Tuesday that you're busy that weekend because you got to go recruit somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you're okay sitting in a convention center on most weekends in the spring, then I think you're probably willing to do this job. But I am very upfront with people because it is a huge time commitment. It's a huge commitment for everyone in your life, not just for you. And especially if you want to do it at the highest level, it's a family choice. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had that discussion a lot with my family and husband over the last couple of years. Like it's an everybody thing, and that's just how it has to be at this level. But
Yeah.
it's not for everybody. And at the end of the day, though, I get to coach a sport for a living at a really cool institution in a really amazing city. So I feel like I've made all the right choices so far.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Kentucky, I think there's a Canadian connection there in Kentucky. Isn't there an assistant coach or something from Canada?
Yeah, well, there's one before that actually. I coached a Canadian while I was at Kentucky,
Oh,
Becky
okay.
Pavin. So the younger sister of Sarah Pavin, who was National Player of the Year here, and obviously a Olympian and on the beach. But yeah, so I get to coach Becky Pavin, and my favorite story to jump the Canadian. Now I'm from Minnesota, Wisconsin area, so I have a little more knowledge. But I blocked her in practice one day, and I was a 22-year-old, playing unrealistically, and I blocked her, and she said, "Hey, you can't make 3-meter moves like that." And of course, none of us had any idea what that meant. So, but yeah, it was a pretty funny story. But yeah, now they've got Ben Josephson there, and what a cool change from me, someone who was totally grew up in the women's game, and to go to Ben, who's obviously spent most of his time in the men's game. Just excited for those athletes to get two totally different coaches.
Yeah, definitely. And now Vanderbilt, what was your path there? You wanted to move that next chair up. What made you pick Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I did want to move the next chair up. I was really scared, and I'm not afraid to admit that. I was very afraid to take the next step, and partially because I've been there with Craig for 12 years, and he did a really good job of involving me in a lot of high level, head coaching responsibilities, which I'm incredibly grateful for. It's a hard job. It's a scary job, and with the changes that are happening in college athletics, it's getting even harder. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason I bring that up is because this job I wouldn't have gotten it had I not been really patient and really careful of what I wanted to make my next move. They announced that they were going to bring volleyball back in April of 2022, I believe, and I was hired December of 22. But as soon as they announced, I kind of told people close to me, like, I want this job. And part of the reason was that I felt like it fit my personality really well. High academics is really important to my family. My sister got her MBA at Harvard, so it's something that has just always been really important to us. So I say that because I understood what Vanderbilt was. I knew I wanted to live in a city. My husband knew he wanted to live in a city. And then also I was really comfortable with the SEC, and I was really comfortable with the league and what takes to win in our league. So between those three things, it just became kind of that opportunity I couldn't pass up.
Yeah, excellent. And now, coming from Kentucky, what are some of the things you'd like to see carry over from the things sort of you've learned and worked with at Kentucky and bring it to Vanderbilt?
Yeah, Craig is very intentional about bringing in the right people and building it around the right people and not sacrificing that. And as you get to the higher levels, it gets harder to make those decisions. You really want to take the best volleyball player no matter what, or the volleyball player that excites you, with their potential the most. And sometimes it's not always the best fit for your program. So that's been a really big thing that I'm making sure that I'm paying attention to and being thoughtful about. I think Craig is one of the best managers of people I've ever been around. So the way he managed his staff, I really enjoyed, and I thought he was really fair and honest with us. So I think there's a ton of things there. And then this list could go on forever and ever and ever because you spend that much time at a place. Obviously, it becomes partly who you are.
Yeah.
I really liked how we played at Kentucky when I was leaving there. I loved the style of play we had. I thought we played fast, but I thought we played really hard and really gravitated to really athletic players. Maybe not the tallest always, but really athletic. And I definitely plan to have similar, style of play here. And yeah, we're looking at Kentucky. We're looking at Louisville. We're looking at Purdue and Nebraska. Those are schools that I really like how they play, and I've always liked how they play. So there's definitely things that we want to model our team after that in that way.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I gotta say, it's gotta be so exciting to start a volleyball program from sort of, even though it was back in the 70s, early 80s, it was really cool. I had JoJo Prosecco on, who started the program at St. John's, and she had a funny story about her first thing when she got there. She had to go tell the basketball coach she has to cut holes in his floor for the volleyball sleeves.
We have put a lot of sleeves in our gyms here. I will say we have done about 7 or 8 of those projects where we had to get sleeves. So yeah, funny story for me was I think it was our first photo shoot. Gilly Mack was our very first recruit on a visit. We didn't have a volleyball. I was like, oh my gosh, we don't have a single volleyball. Like we got to figure this out. So we were going to order some for camps, but I was like, we got to get at least a couple before that. So that was kind of my first jolt. Like, oh my gosh, there is nothing. But yeah, what a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I haven't wished away a single day because I want to be so intentional of how we build this thing. And yeah, it's come with challenges. The people who have guided me, they've really gotten me to think of it as I'm a CEO of a startup almost.
Right. Yeah.
And with that means that things don't always go the way you want it to, and things don't always happen when you want them to. So that's something that I'm dealing with and working with. And you have this vision and you have to make it reality, and that's not always easy. So. Yeah. There have been challenges, but my gosh, what a cool time of our lives as coaches, and something we'll tell for the rest of our coaching careers, and I know our athletes will as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like as starting a program, how do you prioritize what you focus on? Like, do we get focused on the players? Do we focus on building the coaches? How do you focus which one gets the attention, or everything?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I'm putting myself back into my shoes, and last January of 2023, but the first thing that I felt was like vital was getting people around me that I trusted and believed in the vision and wanted to do it. And I would definitely be missing an opportunity if I didn't shout out my staff here. They have been so incredible and patient. I mean, all of them want to coach volleyball, and they've all taken almost a hiatus, whatever you want to call it, of coaching. So they've been really patient. They've been really bought in. This situation does lend itself to a lot of pride, but we get very proud of the accomplishments we have. And yeah, we're really excited to see what we can do. So that was the first thing, was getting that staff in place.
Yeah.
And the second thing was getting what we're looking for in our athletes and making sure that there were some non-negotiables across the board that we were not willing to bend on at all, and then start building the roster. And we're still doing that. And it's been a whirlwind of commits and being told no, and I've been told no more in the last 2 years than I have my entire coaching career, it feels like.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. It just drives me to go get a better player after that. So it's been so fun, so challenging. But yeah, prioritizing is tough. It's like, where do you start? Where do you go from here? And I think making sure you have a good roadmap in place, and that's something I've spent a lot of time on, is making sure we're on the path that I want us to be on, is something I spend a lot of my time on.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
I bet. Absolutely. And now, to this point, what's been the most exciting part about, building this team from the ground up?
I think when an athlete believes our vision, and when an athlete tells me, like, I want to be first, I think that's so cool. Like, they'll say things like that. And that hits me deep in the heart. Like, it's just like, holy cow, they see this, they can visualize this. And that's not easy. And in a world that's obviously even more, what's right in front of your face. It gives me a lot of respect for these young kids that can see the future and can put their trust in us as a staff,
right,
and trust in the athletic department here. That's a pretty cool feeling. And same from the parents. And I know we're going to surprise people. We use the term shock the world in our offices and with our team a lot. And I think that will be the most fun part. But so far, it's just been seeing the athletes buy in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I gotta say, I love don't be next, be first. I think that's genius.
Yeah, actually, right on my wall over there. But yeah, that's we wanted to make sure that people understood what this opportunity was, and I came from a program where it was a well-oiled machine, and I worked really hard to make it that way, along with a lot of other talented people. That's one experience you can have. You can plug right in and have a great career and know what you're getting. This is a totally different experience. You can
Yeah,
come here and have your name literally littered all over our record book when you leave.
right.
You can come back 10 years from now and say, like, I was a part of the first team that did this. I was a part of the first team that beat this team. And those it just lends itself to a lot of core memories.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and adding into that, how do you pitch Vanderbilt as a new volleyball program to a prospective recruits who are you're up against, like just in the SEC alone, some great teams.
Yeah, I think I gravitate to the things that I feel like we have that nobody else does. And the first thing is the degree. And it would be dumb of me to not bring that up right off the bat. It's, a top 15 school in the country. The only, academically private school or a private school in the SEC, but also the only, high academic, if you want to put it into a category in our league. So those are things that we have to take advantage of.
Yeah.
And we have to target athletes that understand what a Vanderbilt degree is. And I start that almost all of my conversations with recruits are, what does a Vandy degree mean to you? Just because I want to know if they get it and if they understand how this can help them in their future career. The second thing is starting a program from scratch. Nobody else is saying that right now. So
Right.
we're going to lean into it as much as we can. I'm not going to hide any parts of it. It's going to be really freaking hard. And some athletes, I tell it's going to be really hard, and they don't seem to have a reaction at all. Some athletes get a little smile on their face, and those are the athletes I'm like, you is who I want in this program. So yeah, I think that's what we really sold it on, is the things that nobody else can. And the last thing is the city of Nashville.
Yeah.
I ask recruits this a lot, but where do you want to be on an off weekend in January? And I think Nashville second to none is where I want to be. And I know it's not the experience everyone's looking for, but again, we're going to put forward what we are and what we have, and let them decide if it's where they want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you touched on a good point there about, the importance of academics. I had Micah Christensen on, and his parents instilled to him that the importance of the institution you go to is really important, because really you're one injury away from volleyball going away, and now your education, what you really need to rely on.
Yeah, no, for sure. And getting to be here and getting to see what our alums are accomplishing is pretty cool. I went to an alum function last fall, and I'm meeting all of these guys from the 2008 football team that made a bowl game, and they are, district attorneys and hedge fund managers and CEOs of companies, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this place is incredible. And now that's not to say you can't get a great education everywhere. I believe you can get a great education at any school in the SEC, at any school, if you apply yourself and work the tail off. There are some things that just are going to come a little easier here, and fair or not, if your resume says Vanderbilt on it, it's going to do something different in the job search. It just is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we have to show that. We have to showcase that to our athletes of what a Vanderbilt degree can do for them and how it can kind of launch them into their next career. And a lot of our athletes go into a college career thinking, if I can play pro, I'm going to try. But we're not at the point right now where they're banking on it, or where they're, putting all their eggs into that basket. I hope we get to that point, but we're not quite there yet. So having a degree and something to rely on is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, something unique, when it comes to, sporting programs, like, in the pros, you can just, a new league starting. All right. Everybody has, you can pick experienced players and everything like that. With collegiate sports, how do you find experienced players, or you just have, do you rely on the transfer portal, or really just recruit them in and go from there?
Yeah. So the first thing we did was we got verbally committed and then signed 6 freshmen. So in the 24 class who just arrived on campus last week. But obviously going into our first season in 2025, we didn't want to have a whole roster of freshmen and redshirt freshmen. We probably wouldn't be very successful. Our goal is to be, competitive in year one. So we knew we'd have to hit the portal for some experience. What happened that I didn't expect was that we were able to tap into some really unique situations in the portal. And 2 of our athletes are grad transfers. So they graduated from their previous institutions, Florida State and Loyola Marymount. And one of them took a semester off. So she just had a gap semester. And both of them, the other one graduated in May, but both of them are here now getting their grad degrees. And they will redshirt this year and then play their 6th year as their COVID year. So we are
Oh,
still
nice.
able to leverage that COVID year a little bit, even
Yeah.
though we're starting after, the last year of the COVID year. So our team's going to look, we call them the grad moss. We're going to have like two 23 or 24-year-olds with a bunch of freshmen. And we did get a couple other transfers in between and hope to get another. So we're doing our best to balance it
Yeah.
out. But at the same time, if we want to be really successful in 5 years, I didn't feel like we could only get juniors and seniors. I felt like we'd be in trouble, down the road. So
Yeah.
we really are trying to build, for the long haul.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about, the SEC being, really competitive. How do you plan on preparing the team to be ready that, that level of play? Because I saw you've got games lined up for spring, some 4 exhibition matches, but that's a long way as a way to, get the players game ready. And like you said, you've got freshmen coming in who've never played against women at that, whether they're 22, 23 or whatnot, and this pace of the game, just the volleyball IQ.
Yeah, again, it goes back to the recruiting process. I told them it was going to be hard. And
Yeah.
I told them, like, we're going to be playing national championship caliber teams in year one. They're not going to wait for us to get good enough to play in the SEC. Like, we're doing it right off the bat. And you attract a certain person when you talk like that. And so I think that is the first part is we have people that are not afraid of that challenge and that are excited about it. The second thing is we have a whole year now, of just training. And I think a lot of coaches you could interview on this podcast would say that's what I want. I would love a whole year of no pressure, no results, no outcomes to worry about. And we're going to have to spend a lot of time making sure they're playing against physical blockers and things like that. And that's what we're working on and making sure we have a good, second side of the net. We're also going to spend a lot of time, developing our competitive maturity. And that's stuff that is going to be, we have to get creative
Yeah.
because you develop a lot of competitive maturity through playing, obviously. But we'll play those 4 exhibitions. We're also going to take a foreign trip to Japan
Oh, nice.
in May, June. So we'll get another 2 to 3 weeks of just our squad. And then, yeah, we'll have our, normal preseason like everybody else does starting in August. So I honestly feel lucky, though, at the amount of time we have with this group. We're
Mm-hmm.
calling this group Team Zero. And they have a lot of time to develop not only their competitive maturity, but also their physical strength, physical health. Um, get their feet underneath them academically. So I'm excited about this year and what we can do and how much development we can see within our team.
Yeah. Excellent. And also, something that's got to be cool, I think it's cool, is, starting with a program from scratch, you get to develop the culture that you want. You're not coming into pre-existing players that have been there. You get to build and mold this how you envision it. And, you got to be pumped about that.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously have a bunch of colleagues that have taken jobs and have immediately wondered how they can get people off the team or how they can get their own players on the team. And I get it. Of course, I get it. If we don't win, we get fired. So, of course, I understand. But the fact that I didn't have to do that, like, again, what a blessing and luxury to get to decide who we want to lead this thing and how we want to start this thing. And yeah, again, it goes back to just being really intentional in the recruiting process and making sure that, again, we have 4 non-negotiable values that we talk about. And if they aren't those, we're not going to recruit them.
Yeah.
And you got to be you have to have good willpower. Because like I said, there's going to be times when you want to recruit the one who's banging balls and, stuff blocking people. And, but you have to have that long-term vision of that's not what's best for us. That's not what's best for the program.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exciting.
Excellent. And now, overall, what's the volleyball community in Nashville like?
Popular. It's popular with on belief, and we're a little behind, and that's Southeast is a little bit behind, and I know your area, your neck of the woods, Northeast and Southeast kind of get drugged through the mud on areas that are far behind. So that's our job, though. Like you said, that's why you're doing this podcast. That's why we host summer camps. That's why we get around to satellite camps and things like that. Is we're just trying to build the volleyball community. But I will say one of the coolest parts is we do have an athlete committed to us in the 25 class from the city of Nashville.
Oh, nice.
That was something that was on my vision board of getting, a local talent on our roster quickly. And I'm so pumped about her. And I can't technically,
Yep.
comment on her yet, but Sarah, very pumped about her and just how she's going to be able to represent us in our city. But yeah, it's growing like crazy. And like I said, I drive home and I pass sand courts in the middle of Centennial Park, grass courts in the middle of Centennial Park, and then some other sand courts at a bar closer to our house, and they're always packed. I mean, they are always packed. So Nashville isn't different than any other city in the United States where the volleyball obsession is here.
Yeah.
And we do have some good, colleges already here playing good volleyball. Lipscomb plays great volleyball just down the road. And what I think our unique perspective is that Texas, Kentucky, Florida, they're going to come to town once every couple of years to play us. And that's the luxury of being in the SEC, of just getting to see volleyball at an even higher level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got to great point there. Bringing in a recruit that's going to be local. Up here in the Northeast, UConn's really close to me, and we go and catch their games. And the fact that they have a girl from Connecticut playing is just because all the girls that go to the camps, oh, I know where club she came from. I think that's really important to build a young fan base.
Yeah, and that's like Terry Pettit 101 stuff back from his Nebraska days. Like,
Yep.
and Mike Hebert, I got to work with him at Minnesota way back when he was coaching there, and those were things that I remember being important to them then. And it hasn't changed. And maybe it's even more important in this day and age where NIL is such a huge part of the college experience. And
Yeah.
you look at some schools, Louisville comes to mind. I know some of their most successful NIL athletes in the traditional space. They're all local kids. And that's not an accident. Like
Yeah.
local businesses want to support the local kid. The local kid also brings more fans to the match, brings more excitement in the match, has more opportunities to do media. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a million reasons why it's a great thing for your program. It's also, again, my sister went to school an hour from where we were from, and she got to have family and friends and so many people come to our matches. And yeah, it made her experience even more unique that
Yeah.
way.
Excellent. And now, when it comes to players, where are you finding the kids? Or are they reaching out to you via email, or are you going to the club tournaments and seeing them there?
Yeah, it hasn't changed since how I would recruit at Kentucky or how Russ recruited at Missouri or Lauren at Notre Dame. So we're kind of just doing the same model of the collegiate model, which is we see most of our athletes on the club circuit for
Yep.
sure. If we can walk into a tournament and there's 500 teams playing versus a high school gym where there's two, obviously we have more exposure to see more athletes. High school, we kind of consider that more babysitting time when we're going to try to go visit either our commits who have already committed to us or top recruits that we want to really show them that they're at the top of our list. But yeah, I think other than that, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel that way.
Yeah.
I would say one of the cool parts about Vanderbilt is that we don't have any geographical restrictions on recruiting, and that's our student body is 10% international. It's almost, I think it's 60% minority. So we have a very, very diverse student body here at Vanderbilt, and I want our team to reflect that. And it's been really fun so far because we can recruit from all over the world. We haven't gotten an international recruit yet, but we have gotten from states, all over the country.
Yeah.
One of the really cool parts is our 2026 roster. I just counted the other day is going to have 4 first-generation Americans.
Oh, wow.
And those are things that I just don't feel like happen everywhere. I think Vanderbilt helps us attract people like that. And what a cool story for our program, but also cool for these kids to get to play, Division I volleyball in the SEC at a brand new program as first-generation Americans. Like, kind of a cool start to the American dream.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really amazing. Awesome. And the other thing I've heard is, for players to, sort of catch the eye of coaches also is a good thing to do is go to the camps that the colleges are running. Like if you're running a college camp for just to show up there, that's another good way of being spotted as well.
Absolutely, and I struggle saying you need to do that. You don't need to do that. I have a hard time with how our camps are a little bit because it really favors kids that have the financial means to
Yeah.
travel and do it. And I hate that. And I think our sport is going to be at the best when everyone has the same opportunities. That's one of the reasons I love having the same date to start official visits. I know there's a lot of complaints about our recruiting calendar right now, but I love that everyone gets to do visits paid for by the school at the same day. I think it's a fair, economical system that we have in place, and I think changes need to be made, but I don't think that's one of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is really important to me that everyone has a chance, and camps are great if you can make it work. And at the same time, I'm going to have a hard time ever telling someone we're not going to recruit you if you don't come to our camp. It's just not fair.
No, absolutely right. And now, over the years of coaching, what have been some more of the challenging things to deal with?
Yeah, my mind first goes to just our changing landscape. And of course, I'm going to talk about that right now because we're in this moment of what is it going to look like a year from now? And nobody knows.
Yeah.
So that's probably been the hardest part is just, I'm a planner, I'm a strategizer. I'd like to think into the future. And all of a sudden, something happens, legislatively and everything changes on your vision of how you want to tackle something. Or, my goal to provide the best student athlete experience in the country. Well, when NIL becomes allowed, all of a sudden you have to think about that. You can't just ignore it because that's part of the student athlete experience. So I would say that's the hardest part is just strategizing when you just don't know the environment we're going to be working in the very near future. But besides that, I would say like things we've talked about, the time demands and getting people in your life to realize that if you want to do it at this level, you got to be selfish at times, and it hurts people and it hurts your friends and family, and that obviously is hard for anyone who cares.
Yeah.
But it's part of it, and so I would say those are the two things that come to mind, are just things that I kind of have to battle. But again, I'm not going to complain about coaching a sport every day at a
No.
cool place like this. So
Absolutely. And now on the flip side, what has been the most rewarding thing for you, to be a volleyball coach?
yeah, it's watching athletes, reach their potential and beyond that. And I have to bring up Avery Skinner, who just played in the Olympics, because she's somebody, I just think her story is so cool. She didn't start for 2 years at Kentucky. She was on the bench behind two other really talented outside hitters. And we kind of saw this athlete getting really skilled in the practice gym throughout those 2 years. And honestly developing this level of focus and determination that I just really hadn't seen in an athlete. And by the time she's a senior, she gets to start. She totally transforms her game and is a first-team All-American and has just one of the coolest seasons ever as an outside hitter. And then she doesn't slow down. She just keeps going. And her and I had a cool chat at one point after she graduated of, what do you actually want out of this? Because I started to realize how special she was her
Yeah.
senior year. And I just said, what do you really want out of this? I don't want you to go over to France and just play because it's fun, unless that's what you want to do. And so he had serious talk about, if you want to make the Olympics, you're capable. Like, you are very capable of doing that. I don't know if you want to do that. And then to see it come true is like, holy cow, this is why we do it. And
Yeah.
to get that FaceTime when she made the team and, I'm sobbing and she's crying. It's just like those moments are 100% why you do it and why that hard stuff doesn't even matter at the end of the day, because the impact we can have on somebody, those moments make you realize like, you can make or break it an athletic career.
Right.
And that's kind of power a coach has. And that makes it a really, really fun and rewarding job.
Excellent. And now, looking at the kids that are coming out of high school, coming from club, are you seeing any tendencies you'd like to see the clubs work on more with the players that are being handed off up to college?
Yeah, of course. And this is not to, rip on the club scene. I think club is hard. You work with athletes twice a week, 3 times a week, for a couple hours, and half the team's not here, half the team is here. So I understand the club environment is really hard. Serving seems to be the one skill that we just have to totally revamp when they get to college. And it's not a hard skill to teach. For me, it's the skill that you can get the fastest gains on just by working on it intentionally. So I think more intentional serving time is something that I would love to see more when I go watch club practices. Just so our athletes have a little more of a, get the other team in trouble mindset from the
Yeah.
service line. And more of a routine mindset. You look at a tennis server, they're going to do everything the exact same every single time. And I have a hard time believing we don't teach that in the youth tennis, realms, that they need to be very routine with their serve. I think that could improve, a lot in the club scene as well.
Yeah.
In terms of, I'm going to say intangibly, what I think is getting subbed out is not a demotion. It's not personal. It's part of the game. And I think too often in volleyball, if one team makes one substitution, we think like, oh my gosh, that person got pulled. And that word is used all the time. And then I look at basketball and nobody says that about basketball players. Nobody says about football. They got pulled. And it's like, it's just, for some reason, there's a stigma around, substitutions in volleyball. And that's something, again, I watched the Olympic 6 matches. It is sub.
Yeah.
And it is what is ever better for us right now. We are going to do. And they have fewer subs at that level. So
Right.
It's, I think, understanding and getting that. A lot of times freshmen have a hard time with that. Like, they might grab a starting spot and they think they've made it, or they think that's it. And then they struggle because of course they do. And you make the change and it's all of a sudden this personal attack on them, or it's never happened to them before in their entire lives.
Right.
And that's understandable, but just having a better awareness of like, this happens in volleyball. This is not that weird. Like, it is a pretty normal part of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So two things on that. First, going back to the improving, having a good serve. I think that is so important because that's really the only skill in volleyball you have 100% control of.
100%. And like I said, and I think Dan Meskey, who's a great Instagram follow, if you don't follow him, he just has some really great tidbits on coaching and things like that. And he had one the other day, if he were taking over a high school team, a middle of the pack high school team, how he would approach his group, and he had serving on there right away. Like, everyone's got to be able to hit a good serve.
Yeah.
And you want to play your 6 best servers. So I think it's getting our younger ages, like, you're not going back there and just putting the ball in play. Like, we are evaluating you. In college, we're going to tell our team that's like, we're going to play our 6 best servers. We're going to find a way to get you on the court. So it is your direct link to playing time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other piece on that sort of path we went down, you were talking about the freshmen. It's got to be so hard for these freshmen that, and you've probably seen this coming from Kentucky. You know, the freshmen that are coming in, they're the alphas, the ones that have been starting the club. Now they're coming in as a freshman. They're no longer the alphas. And how do you not lose them from a mental aspect?
Yeah, well, we just started, so I'm about to figure that out, Barry. No, I'm kidding. No, I can talk from Kentucky, obviously. Um, I really liked what Kirsten said on your podcast about, emotional and, emotional, I don't know, she said emotional intelligence or emotional IQ, I think is how she worded it, and how most freshmen do have it. And I think we get kids these days gets thrown around a little too much, in my opinion. And most kids understand their role as a freshman. They've been on teams before. I think what is so new and kind of what I alluded to earlier is that everybody is like them. They've never been on a team where everybody's as good as they are. Everybody has had the accolades that they've had for the most part. Everybody's played all the time. So those are things, again, that I just think if we could do a better job, maybe, educating, kids at a younger age of how substitution works at the next level and how, balanced rosters work, that helps. But I'm a firm believer that these big topics, it's everyday stuff. It's
Yeah.
little collisions here and there, and making sure they know they're valued, even though it might not be on the volleyball court at that moment, or making sure that they know you still have a plan for them. It might not be today, and it might not be contributing now, but we still have a plan for you in this program. And we still have a plan for you to reach your potential.
Excellent. And now, what advice would you have for, or do you have for freshmen that are starting their, life in college?
I think I go back to what I wish I could tell myself, and what I wish I could tell myself is stop caring what other people think. Like you're gonna get better a lot faster if you just stop worrying about what other people think. And my example is like the first day I walked into the weight room at Ball State, I couldn't do a push-up, I don't think. And so I'm nervous and hiding and hiding and hiding, and I end up like hiding in the back, for as long as I can, and not. I'm like, how am I getting better doing that? And then
Yeah.
2 weeks in, I finally swallow my freaking pride and like go tell our strength coach, like, I am horribly weaker than everybody else. And all of a sudden lifting got fun for me because it became this challenge of how do I get stronger? How do I get better? It's just my starting point. It doesn't, there's nothing else behind it. So I think that's a small example of just not caring what other people think. It's so much easier said than done.
Yes,
And
that's
of course
true.
we all do, but I think ignoring the outside noise when it comes to your development is would be my biggest piece of advice.
So, what has been some of the most significant lessons you've learned as a coach, and how has it influenced your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with what I feel like I've learned here or I'm learning here and what I'm working on. And I think it goes back to, how much your words matter as a coach and how much they can influence an athlete's career, an athlete's mindset, an athlete's confidence, and just making sure, like I said earlier, we have a lot of power. We have a lot of influence. We can mean a lot to an athlete. And honestly, we can be their number one person in their athletic career. Obviously, as a coach, you can do that and do that. And I have that person too. So just understanding, how much every word you say matters, and being not careful, but just again ensuring that you're always on the same mission of developing young people and helping them, reach their potential.
All right, excellent. And now let's go back to your playing days as a middle blocker. For a, what were some of the little things that helped you be a better middle blocker?
I think when I got to Ball State, I knew what read blocking was, but I didn't know what read blocking was. So I would say that was probably the first thing, is like treating read blocking like a totally separate skill. And that was something that I think I got pretty good at. And for me, I wasn't the highest jumper or the fastest side to side. So I felt like I had to be good at those things. So that would be the first thing I think that is a little undervalued as a middle, is just your ability to read block. And the best blockers in college, no doubt, have that skill down. And then I think the mentality of blocking, like again, I started to realize that it was going to be a strength of my game, and I was going to be a better blocker and impact the match more as a blocker than I would as an attacker. And just leaning into that, you're not always trying to make what you're not good at better. You're sometimes trying to make what you are good at even better.
Yeah.
And so I tried to become an elite blocker, and a lot of that was my mentality of I had a goal my senior year, and not a realistic one, but was to touch every ball. Like I was like, I'm just going to make that my goal, and I'm touching every ball. I was probably in the net a little more than I needed to be, but the aggressive blocking mentality was something that I really do think is another learned trait. And some people have it in them, but it's a very teachable trait that can turn you from good to great.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, what I've noticed, like at the VNLs or even at the Olympics, like, middle blocking is not easy at all. Like, it looks like they got, a lot of times they've run that effective middle attack, that middle blocker doesn't even get a chance to get his hands up there.
I'm floored at how good they are at reading at that level, and especially the men because of all the back row quicks coming at you as well. And
Right.
for me, that quick front row and the back row quick over the top was just so hard. It's such a hard plane to reblock on. And man, like I said, I watched 2 or 3 matches while we were in Paris, and it seemed like they read it right way more than they didn't. So
Yeah.
it's so impressive how good they are at that skill.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that surprised me with the men's game is the amount of balls they bury into the net from the serving standpoint.
Yeah.
It's just like, holy cow.
Yeah, they're the experts, the men's coaches, and they're confident it's the right strategy. But there are times I go back to, I think it was my last year of playing. Ohio State won the men's national championship, and I think they had like 26 missed serves in a 5-set match and won. And it was like they literally gave the other team 5 points a set, and they still won. So there's a lot of it's too many misses for me in the women's game, but I'm not the expert in the men's game.
Yeah.
We're going to kind of shoot for a 90% in rate. And that's kind of where we're at, where our team is. But who knows? Maybe we'll have a couple spinners in a few years, and that'll have to change.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I just, give me a low, fast float serve. That's, you don't know where that thing's going to go. And it's got to be, but hey, that's why I'm where I am, and that's where they're where they are.
Well, and it's really cool to see the development of the hybrid serve. I think that's just going to keep coming, and just you hear the term in gyms, exploratory serving or explore your serve, and I love that. I think the more we can think of serving it as an individualistic trait, and the more we can think of it as like how you hit a ball best might not be how I hit a ball best. The ball is going to come off our hands differently, all that kind of thing. So I'm really excited to see the hybrid in our game, and seeing a ton of them in the men's volleyball game. Of a lot of guys who probably used to float in the men's game are now hitting hybrids. Taylor Averil was one of them. And
I was just going to say that. Yeah,
I've never 5-to-5, really nice ones. So I'm really excited to see that, and hope that we will have a couple on our team.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was about to say Taylor serve, because it's like he tosses it like it's going to be a jump float, and all of a sudden he gets on top of that thing, and he kills it.
Or Micah Christensen, you don't know what he's going to hit. You don't know if he's floater or the top. So they're doing some really cool things. Those guys that obviously just consume their lives with volleyball and are obsessed with it, and I love the technical stuff that comes out of it just by them having fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, what's your take on the opinion of the state of the game right now?
I think we're in a really good spot, a really healthy spot, and to that we owe a lot of people who came before us in terms of coaches. And I brought up a couple, Terry Pettis and Mike Eberts, and there's people like Kathy DeBoer that have committed their whole life, to trying to make volleyball a more accessible sport and a more popular sport. And I think we're in a good place because of the people like that. I think there's a lot more work to be done, and I am still, bothered by the fact that we don't have, more coverage on some things. And like I already talked about this, and I'm going to keep fighting for it. That doesn't mean we're not in a good place as a sport. I think we're in a great place, and high school participation is through the roof. We're the #1 team sport, in the country for high school participation. And I ran those numbers just for SEC states where, volleyball is not that big. And all but 3 states, volleyball was a #1 sport for high school girls. So team sport. So just like even down here where volleyball's not big, and I bet we'd find some similarities up in the Northeast, a ton of kids are still playing.
Mm-hmm.
And our growth rates at the younger levels are going up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're in a really good spot, a really healthy spot. That can't be taken for granted. I think we've seen other sports lose popularity all of a sudden, and they're starting to dip a bunch, and we can't take it for granted. And it's got to be, like I said, honestly, I think there are 3 main jobs that I hold, and it's developing young women, winning. If I don't do that, I can't do the other ones.
Yep.
And then growing the game. So those are really the 3 things that I feel are my responsibilities as a head coach.
Yep. Excellent. All right. So fun question here. And I ask this for every guest, Eric and Taylor have this thing, Shoji and Averil. What is the toughest position in volleyball? And now you being a middle blocker, also coaching, what's your, where do you lean?
I knew this one was coming. So I have thought about it. I am on team setter, physical and mental. I don't see how, first of all, being a setter mentally is, I can't imagine how exhausted they are after a 5-set match from just the mental side of it. But physically too, they jump more than anybody else. They maybe don't max jump on every single one, but they jump more than anyone else. They got to chase down passes. They got to do all the skills. So I just have always admired setters, and I know they're very proud of that. But I do think setting is the hardest.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so now away from the court, what are some of the things you enjoy?
Oh, I like to eat. We're big foodies, so yeah, trying out new restaurants, new food is always something that is on our list. We love music, so we have been to concert after concert. Saw Zach Bryan a couple weeks ago and just had a blast and live in the right place for that. And I like to work out, so I make sure to take care of myself. I'm a very morning routine person, so I make sure to take care of that. And um, I think Kirsten said this too, but I'm a big sleeper. I get like 8 or 9 hours every single night,
Nice.
non-negotiable for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a huge sleeper, and man, I sound boring from these things. So, oh, we got a lake house up in northern Wisconsin that we go up to pretty regularly, and that's kind of become my Zen space,
Yeah.
my place that I can be me and just be alone. And so try to get up there just for the mental health as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I had Mason Briggs on there a few weeks ago, and he was talking about the Zach concert he went to. And how, what do you give it thumbs up?
Oh, it was incredible. It was incredible. Yeah, he brought up Casey Musgraves, who's one of my favorites. So it was an incredible concert, and that guy knows how to put on a show. It is entertainment, entertainment on entertainment on entertainment. So really, really, yeah, fun time and great music.
Anders, well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time. But before you go, who in your volleyball circle do you think should come on and have a good story to share with us?
I think I think you should get Avery Skinner to come on.
All
I
right.
think, yeah, her first Olympics obviously would have a really good story to tell there, but also a really cool story of perseverance
Yeah.
and going through hard times, how it makes you better in the long run. I think she'd be able to tell a really cool story based on that.
All right. Well, we got the inside connection here, so we'll get her on. And again,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for doing this. Good luck next year. It's going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, thanks, Barry, and stay in touch and let us know how we can help you out.
Absolutely.
Hey, she's a beauty.